Well, welcome everyone. My name is Phil Flora. I'm Vice President of Sales for Leopard Solutions. Welcome to our Lateral Partner Hiring Insights webinar, where we polled AmLaw 200 lateral hiring partners and folks that run the lateral recruiting teams at law firms. We did a survey, and we're going to talk about the results. We're going to also talk about some high-level research and data from our Leopard Solutions database as we gear up for the end of this year, which has flown by amazingly so quick. I'm going to drop some links into the chat. This has been a heavy webinar period for us. I believe this is our third that we've done over the past couple of weeks. I think we have two more coming up still in the early part of December. One around Leopard Prowess, which is our brand new product for in-house counsel to use for outside counsel search and management, as well as a year sort of wrap-up or year in review webinar that we're doing with SharePoint Technologies, which had recently acquired us back in May, for those that aren't aware. So I'm going to drop some links into the chat, but I'm going to pass it over to Ava to just kind of set the stage for today's conversation, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you so much, Bill. So excited to have so many of you here with us today. My name is Eva Wisnik, and I founded Wisnik Career Enterprises about 28 and a half years ago. And we focus on placing recruiting professionals into law firms, as well as marketing professionals and practice management professionals. And I would say that why I think this topic is particularly important today is that there's been such an uptick from where we sit in terms of lateral partner recruiting roles, because firms are very actively looking to add lateral partners, as you'll see from some of our statistics, and they need dedicated professionals to do that. Some of you probably do lateral partner recruiting, including, and then also associate recruiting, and maybe even have a hand in some of the summer recruiting. And I know when I first remembered lateral partner hiring back when I was in law firms as the director of recruiting and training at Schulte, Rothman, Zabel, Cadwalder, Wickham, and Taft, it wasn't part of my department. It was usually started out as the assistant to the managing partner. But now this has become a real profession, with some departments that we work with as big as 5 professionals just dedicated to lateral partner recruiting. Oftentimes that you'll see it's maybe 1 or 2. So we asked many of the lateral partner recruiting professionals that we work with to fill this survey out. We got over 90 responses, and I think we captured some real trends and newness in the market, things that are happening that I think might be valuable to you. And those of you who are from search firms, I think you'll find some very valuable information here too. In addition to that, about a week ago, we did, with Leopard Solutions, we did a panel for the CMOs in New York, and we had a very nice turnout. We talked about integration quite a bit, because many of those heads of marketing, recruiting, and training are involved with integration, and what a seat that's taking. And I think that's a big growth area. So I hope that you will enjoy the information we're going to share with you. I hope there'll be some real takeaways that you could take back to your leadership, if you're a search firm, to your team members, and be able to really apply and use this information as we launch into 2025. And with that, we're going to start the slides. Craig's going to focus on some of the data that he analyzed. I'll make some comments, and Phil will jump in on some of the specific data that Leopard Solutions has captured. But we welcome your questions. So if you want to post anything in the question box there, or if you want to be anonymous, but if you have a question, please answer it, and we're happy to try to share what we know with that.
And then also just wanted to mention, those that are familiar with our webinars in the past, we haven't done polls. So this is a new thing that we are going to do. We want to try and make this very interactive. Ava had mentioned that we got 93 responses from this survey. We're going to ask about 4 or 5 questions kind of throughout this webinar of the group here. We have a large group of folks, both from the recruiting world, inside a law firm and outside a law firm. So we'd love to gather some additional insights, kind of compare it against the results. So be on the lookout for those polls that will kind of sprinkle throughout today's presentation. Craig, want to kick it off?
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Eva. My name is Craig Savitzky, and I'm the Manager of Research and Insights here at Leopard Solutions. And thanks everyone for joining us today as we unveil the results of an exciting initiative, the 2024 Survey of Lateral Partner Hiring. So this was an inaugural survey, a collaborative effort between Leopard Solutions and Wisnik Career Enterprises, and it was conducted from mid-September through early November of this year. We received a total of 93 responses from professionals in talent acquisition and recruitment roles, all with a focus on lateral partner hiring. The survey, which was anonymized to ensure candor, covered a broad range of topics, including search fees, strategic objectives, salaries and budgets, methods for tracking ROI, tools used in the process, and common challenges and pain points. And we're thrilled to share the insights we've gathered and look forward to a dynamic discussion around the results. Okay, so just some quick demographical information for context. So as shown here, nearly 3/4 of respondents are currently working in big law, employed at AMLA 200 firms, while just over a quarter represent boutique, mid-sized, or smaller firms. So now getting into some hiring objectives and obstacles. So here we asked if you had more time, which aspects of your job would you focus on? And the data set reveals that the top priorities for respondents, if afforded more time, center on proactive recruitment and strategic planning. So 69% would focus on identifying and sourcing lateral candidates, while 64% aim to develop and implement lateral hiring strategies. These choices suggest a strong emphasis on strengthening talent pipelines and aligning hires with long-term firm goals. Additionally, 53% highlighted the importance of conducting market research on competitors, indicating a need for better competitive intelligence to stay ahead in the lateral hiring market. Lower priority areas such as talent development and improving firm culture suggest these are either perceived as adequately resourced or secondary to immediate recruitment objectives.
So can we go back to that a second, please?
Yeah, sure.
So what I see here is what the calls we get when somebody firm calls says we need to add to our lateral partner hiring team, or we need to hire somebody who's fully focusing on that. The first things that they're the 69%, 64%, and 53%, I would call them strategic initiatives, where initially a lot of hiring lateral partner hiring roles focus a little bit more on the organizing and scheduling and making sure the resumes were vetted and the jobs were well communicated to the search firms. But now what we're hearing is somebody who can maybe do the initial research and say, okay, who are the top lawyers in that market we want to open a new office in, or we need to expand in antitrust, and even identifying, sometimes even calling those candidates, or at least feeding that information to the recruiters and collaborating with them when they were on those searches. So we just see kind of that intelligence, information, data that the firms are looking for. Somebody at this point are looking for somebody who can, be able to get that kind of research done, use tools, similar to like Leopard List, and be able to identify targets and be able to really kind of help in that strategic way. So that's kind of what I'm seeing there, and I'm curious if that's what your jobs are focused on these days, or that's something that you wish you had time to do. Okay, great. Next slide.
Okay, so here we see what participants identified as their primary strategic objective for recruiting lateral partners. And the chart revealed strategic growth in practice areas and expertise is the primary driver for lateral partner recruitment, cited by 39% of respondents. This emphasis reflects firms' focus on strengthening core capabilities or diversifying offerings to meet evolving client demands and industry trends. Meanwhile, revenue growth and financial objectives and opportunistic and gap-filling hiring suggest a more tactical approach aimed at immediate economic returns or addressing specific shortages within the firm. The relatively lower priority given to geographic expansion and new markets and client-centric market share expansion indicates that while entering new regions and gaining new clients are important, they are less central to most firms' strategies than enhancing expertise within existing practice areas. This distribution suggests that firms prioritize the depth of expertise over broader expansion efforts, perhaps reflecting a cautious but focused response to competitive pressures in a fluctuating market. It also indicates that firms may see greater ROI in bolstering their internal capabilities rather than seeking purely geographic or client-driven growth.
Yeah, and I'll kind of jump in here, Craig. I mean, I think you hit it on the head, and even you kind of alluded to this on the previous slide as well. What we're seeing when we talk to law firms is a growth of like the chief strategy officer or strategic committees at law firms, where you're seeing folks that are on the recruiting team, on the marketing team, you see partners, you see senior leadership at law firms kind of coming together, creating sort of strategic plans for the upcoming year, trying to identify growth areas, either practice areas or office, geographic areas, and then using sort of hiring and specifically partner hiring, either groups of attorneys or even acquisitions. I mean, we're hearing a lot recently about mergers. There's been some large profile mergers taking place between some traditional large US firms and some UK based firms, combinations, really to help strengthen the base, grow internationally. So I think, we're going to see more and more of this as we go forward, strengthening the base, strengthening specific practices and sort of strategic growth, and using sort of data to help drive the decision on where they go, sort of moving forward. Ava, there was a question in the chat. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see it. Do
Okay.
you mind reading it?
Yeah, so there's one question. What does it tell for this? I think from the previous slide, what does it tell us that enhancing talent development is a low focus, whereas sourcing lateral candidates is a top focus?
Yeah, I think that whether it's correct or not, I think that when law firms think about developing talent, they're much more focused on the associates and especially the junior associates. I do know some firms do have partner trainings, whether it's leadership training and things like that. But I think that there's an assumption that by the time you're hiring a lateral partner, that they are trained to be a good attorney, and probably an assumption, maybe right or wrong, that they have some of the important skills you need to be a very successful practitioner.
Thank you. Go ahead, Craig.
Okay, so moving on to our next question, what primary challenges does your firm encounter when recruiting new lateral partners? And what we found was that negotiating terms and conditions, 37%, emerges as the most significant challenge in recruiting new lateral partners, reflecting the intricate balancing act of aligning compensation, expectations, and responsibilities. Close behind, the transition of practice operations, which received 30%, highlights logistical complexities such as transferring clients and syncing operational workflows. Notably, alignment with firm culture, which received a 22% share, and retention of key attorneys, 9%, rank as lesser concerns, suggesting firms feel relatively assured in their cultural fit assessments and talent retention strategies. This focus on negotiation and operational transitions underscores the strategic and practical demands involved in lateral partner hiring.
All right, so where I want to kind of focus on this is, it's good information in negotiating the actual packages, the compensation or bonuses or guarantees or whatever it is. I'm sure that that's something that the recruiters on our webinar can know very well. But I really just want to take a moment to look at the alignment with firm culture. And I know we use that term like that person is a good fit for the culture, that person is not a fit for the culture. But I actually think this is a place where those of you who are helping to recruit the best lateral partners for your firm could maybe help the firm a little bit more in terms of identifying what those traits are, what those characteristics are, and maybe even looking backwards. I know I've done interview training for 98 law firms, and specifically for some of those firms on the lateral partner side. And what I do is I really delve into who has been successful, especially ones that they've acquired laterally, partners they've acquired laterally, and what are those traits, or when something hasn't worked out, what are some red flags that maybe we ignored because we were so excited about their potential book of business or their practice area expertise. But I think the alignment with the firm culture, as many of us have seen, is something that either makes or breaks a good hire over time. So just really delving into that and helping your firms to really clarify what are some of those traits that are really important for your culture. Because I could tell you this, having worked with 120 law firms are not the same. And we know that when we maybe move laterally from a firm to firm, or for those of you who work with on the search side who work with different clients, but really identifying that and clarifying that and kind of being clear as to what could work and what are red flags will help you to make some of the best hiring decisions.
Okay, so now we're going to get into frustrations. And what we found was that key challenges in the lateral hiring process revolve around limited diversity in the candidate pool, which was cited by 54% of respondents as the top frustration. So that kind of jumped out at me. This reflects ongoing struggles across the industry to achieve greater inclusivity and meaningful progress on diversity initiatives. Lengthy hiring timelines rank as the second major concern, highlighting inefficiencies that not only delay decisions, but also increase the risk of losing strong candidates. Adding to these challenges is the lack of qualified candidates, cited by 34%, emphasizing the competitive nature of the talent market, where finding the right fit requires substantial time and effort. Another notable frustration, inconsistent interview practices, which was named by 32%. And that, I think, points to the need for firms to streamline and standardize their hiring processes to ensure fairness and improve the overall candidate experience. These findings underline the importance of tackling systemic inefficiencies and prioritizing diversity to create a more effective and equitable hiring process.
So,
Go ahead, Eva.
No, just again, the interview process. I'm going to tell you a quick vignette that I heard that I think is really just was enlightening for me to hear. Right at the beginning of COVID, I was working with a firm on a lateral partner interview training program, and I was talking to their director of lateral partner hiring, who is very experienced, and she told me how, because of COVID, things went the interviews went to Zoom rather than in person, as we know, and some of them say that way. And she was able to actually sit on a couple of lateral partner interviews, sort of in a little box. She kind of went in to make sure everything was working. This was, really like end of March of 2020. And she ended up staying in the room, and she was really shocked at how ineffective the actual interviews were, meaning she would hear her partners say to this candidate, "Oh, so you live in that town. Does your kid play softball here? Or, do you know Joe down the street?" And she found, as the more she sat in on these interviews, that there really wasn't as much substance to them, or that the information that could have been gathered was not necessarily addressed. So just something to think about. And one of the ways you can even evaluate that is, are you getting really good feedback on the evaluation forms, or if you're debriefing with them? Are your lawyers asking the right questions and engaging this candidate, or are they all asking the same thing? What's your book of business? How much of that business do you think will come over? So really thinking about having a process that is helping you to gather the information and also share information, because every interview is a branding opportunity. And what I mean by that is that even if you don't want that lateral partner candidate at this moment, You still want them to have the best possible candidate experience, and you want them walking away understanding what your law firm is about, what their value proposition is, what kind of clients they have, because you never know if they can come back as a client or as a referral. So really thinking about that process and what can we do to make sure that is as effective as possible. Phil, what did you
Awesome.
want to add, please?
No, I was going to say I was going to drop into the one of our first polls, because I think Craig and yourself kind of talked about the standardization of data and information between both the candidate, the recruiter, the law firm recruiting team. NALSC did a major effort to launch what's called their universal LPQ process. And what I wanted to do was kind of ask the poll, and it should be out there, a question around how familiar you are with the effort that NALSC has put in place, and is that something that you guys are using? And again, this is a good question for pretty much everyone in our audience, both law firm people and recruiting people. So would love to just kind of get some feedback, general feedback on that. So we're getting some good responses here. While it's going here, Craig, maybe you want to jump to the next slide, and then when we get a chance, I'll read the results.
Yeah, sure. So now we're going to pivot to some trends in lateral partner hiring. The data on lateral partner hiring trends reveal two key insights: hiring volume. So with a mean of about 15 rounded and a median of 12 hires per firm annually, the numbers seem to indicate that lateral hiring remains a significant strategy for growth and talent acquisition, especially for larger or more dynamic firms. The relatively high median underscores that many firms are actively bringing in talent, but likely with manageable scales rather than mass recruitment. And then recruitment sources, we see here that the heavy reliance on search firms, 56%, suggests that firms continue to depend on external expertise for identifying and vetting top-tier lateral candidates, perhaps likely due to the specialization and network access that these firms provide. Referrals, accounting for 35%, show the importance of internal and external networks in the hiring process. The minimal use of acquisitions, only 5%, reflects that while mergers and acquisitions can bring in lateral partners, they remain a less common avenue compared to direct recruitment or personal networks.
Just want to mention that these statistics are specific from this survey, just to kind of ground the information.
Sure.
That this is the people that responded to the survey. I'm not saying that, I'm sure it reflects the market quite nicely, but it's specific to those who responded.
Yeah, and I'm gonna share the results of the last question we asked, and I want to actually follow up with the second question, piggybacking on this one now. So it looked like we got about 58% weren't aware of the universal LPQ that NALSC could put out. Or actually, I'm sorry, are not using it. 27% weren't aware, but 15% are. And that's I know that's a big effort that they did. So I would definitely look to NALSC to learn a little bit more about that process and that they're putting in place. The next question I wanted to jump in with is sort of a piggyback onto this. So let me load it up. So the poll is asking, from the folks that are on this webinar, where did you guys do the most hiring during 2024? Where was the source of most of the partners that you guys were able to bring into the firm? Was it external recruiters? Was it referrals from partners? Proactive outreach from your internal recruiting team, or just direct candidate applications? So so we can, Craig, I can turn it over to you while this is collecting data.
Sounds good. So now I'll move on to our next slide, continuing with the theme of trends in lateral partner hiring. What qualities do you prioritize when recruiting lateral partners? And I know, Eva, you touched a little bit on book of business earlier. So the key priorities emerge for firms in recruiting lateral partners, shedding light on industry hiring trends. So we see business and client base take center stage. A striking 93% of respondents prioritize a candidate's book of business and client relationships, highlighting the critical importance of immediate revenue contributions and client acquisition in lateral hiring decisions. And then I would say specialization over generalism. So practice area expertise and specialization are emphasized by 72% of respondents, signaling that firms are seeking candidates with niche skills to strengthen high demand areas and support strategic growth initiatives. Balancing cultural and strategic fit. So cultural fit is valued by 67%, of firms, while 51% prioritize alignment with strategic goals, demonstrating that successful lateral hires must integrate seamlessly into the firm's ethos while supporting its broader objectives. And then we see lower priority on leadership and geography. So attributes like leadership skills and geographic market knowledge rank low on the list, perhaps indicating that firms may consider these qualities less critical or expect them to develop post-hire. These findings reveal a highly focused approach to lateral hiring, where firms weigh business acumen and technical expertise most heavily while accounting for long-term cultural and strategic alignment.
Okay, just going to share the results of that last survey, our last poll we did. So similar results. Craig, you want to just go back one slide?
Yeah,
so we saw
very
from
similar.
from the group. So it was 58% in our survey said external recruiters, whereas our poll, our Snap poll, got us at 67% from the 2024 partner hiring came from external recruiters, 32% from referrals from partners. So folks that partners know and trust in their networks is a good source of hires for during 2024. 15% from internal outreach from the recruiting team, and then 5% from inbound was our Snap survey.
Right. Yeah, very similar.
interesting stuff. Okay, yeah, we did that. Okay, so here we see the overwhelming importance of a book of business in lateral partner hiring decisions. 78% of respondents rating it as very important or extremely important. Firms clearly prioritize this attribute as a key factor in evaluating candidates. The emphasis highlights the direct connection between a lateral partner's client relationships and a firm's immediate revenue goals. The 17% who view it as moderately important may reflect firms seeking candidates who bring over strategic value, other strategic value, such as niche expertise or alignment with the firm's long-term objectives. However, the lack of responses indicating it is not at all important underscores its near universal significance in partner recruitment. Okay.
So this is interesting. It's exactly what we've seen, that in terms of the teams of the members of the law firm that are focused on lateral partner hiring, 56% of our response said that team has increased. And it's exactly what we've seen. It's probably the biggest growth we've seen in terms of recruiting department roles in law firms. 38% said remain same, and 6% said decrease. And that could be somebody who maybe lost a member and they haven't had time to replace them yet. So if any of you need extra help, because many of you did mention that you have so many things that you're doing every day that you're reactive to, and you wish you could do some of those proactive things that you in the survey indicated that if you had time, you do them, you can see that teams have definitely been growing. Next slide.
Sure.
So we did ask you all in terms of the salaries, and so we asked what your title was, and we had a number of chiefs, a number of directors, senior managers, and managers responding. I know some of you might have coordinators. We probably didn't send the survey to coordinators. We might have only sent it to sort of the whoever's heading up the team or the senior people. But we see the average and median salaries. Whenever I see average and median fairly close together, I think we're capturing that market. Now, just keep in mind that this was we're asking lateral partner recruiting team members across the country. So depending on where you're responding from, there are differences. We have all our salary surveys are all on our website, www.wisnik.com, and they're general salaries. This is the first time we've been able to do in this partnership a survey of just professionals in recruiting in law firms that are focused on lateral partner hiring. So excited to have captured some of this information. And we basically did ask recruiting professionals. So I know there are some BD professionals who are also involved with integration and growth, but we were focusing on people whose titles probably have some form of recruiting in their title. So these were the numbers that we captured. And the next slide just captured the bonuses, which are they look like they're, at least for the chiefs, they're about 20% of the base salary. And that's what we find in most recruiting roles. If you're in a manager or above, the average salary is the average bonus is about 15% of salary in most cases. So this is what we found in terms of numbers, in case any of you are interested in looking at numbers as we're approaching the end of the year and compensation conversations.
Okay, so yes, segueing from salary data to efforts towards diversity, 81% of firms are actively taking steps to recruit more female lateral partners. This shows a strong industry-wide commitment to improving gender diversity at the partner level. This reflects broader efforts to address representation gaps and meet client expectations for diverse legal teams. However, 19% of firms are not pursuing this goal. So it tells us that there's still room for progress in making gender diversity a universal priority within the legal industry. The divide emphasizes the need for continued advocacy and systemic changes to promote inclusivity in lateral hiring practices. I don't know,
Yeah.
Phil, I don't know if you wanted
Yeah,
to
I'll jump in. I mean, we've I'm sure as people are familiar with our webinars, we've done a series, really an annual report around diversity over the past 4 years. We've been tracking sort of both gender and ethnic diversity numbers and seeing sort of the change in that. When we do our State of the Industry webinar, which we'll do in the early part of January every year, diversity is one of those numbers we report on. And obviously, it's been a major initiative. We'll see, hopefully it continues to be a major initiative as we go into 2025. Diversity Lab, we've worked and had some conversations with them in the past. They keep pushing the initiative, and more and more firms are becoming Mansfield certified, which is really great to see. So we are seeing in our numbers more female associates are entering law firms than male associates. The last few years, that data point has been shown in our data. So hopefully, as time progresses and those firms put those initiatives in place to retain those female attorneys and eventually get promoted to partner, the numbers will increase in the partnership ranks as well.
Okay, thanks, Phil. And now shifting over to onboarding opportunities. So here we see a generally positive perception of onboarding process, with 68% of respondents rating their firm's approach as either extremely effective or very effective. That suggests that many firms have established solid systems for integrating new hires, particularly lateral partners. However, the 29% who view it as only somewhat effective or worse reveal opportunities for improvement. Enhancing these systems could help firms better support new hires during critical transitions, increasing retention and alignment with firm culture. And the 2% rating onboarding is not at all effective. That just illustrates the potential risk of neglecting this key aspect of recruitment.
So I'm going to jump in here a little bit because it's wonderful to see that quite a few of you think that it's very effective and extremely effective. But I definitely hear when I interview lateral partners at firms who have come in, when I'm doing their interview training, I oftentimes ask for lateral partners to respond to how effective it's been. Do you want to launch that poll right now?
I just did, yeah. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, while you're going, I'll let everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that just keeping in mind that integration is not onboarding and orientation. I think everybody has got those processes down incredibly well. Integration goes way beyond that in terms of melding that person into your culture, maybe taking them on a road trip. This is what we talked about at the CMO panel last week quite a bit. And there are some best practices to think about. And I know many of you are in such a reactive stage, just trying to get those candidates in, get the offers out, get the people in the door. But I would say one of the lowest lying fruits from when I sit and I talk to people at firms across the country, true integration and making sure that the partners in the firm know what this new partner can bring to their clients, making them feel comfortable and really supporting them even financially in terms of rewarding them for introducing them to clients, helping them to write articles, really working with the BD team here on the integration is amazing. And I know that there's one person who I have incredible admiration for who really focuses on this immensely. And it's really having a sponsor at the firm. It could be a business services professional. It could be a partner who's really kind of making sure that they're meeting the right people, that they're poised to maybe write articles with existing attorneys who are experts in areas, but really taking that. I think that your return on investment in terms of hiring the right people and then integrating them is going to increase dramatically. So just thinking about what can I do better in 2025? How can I support their integration so that they really become not just a member of the firm, but a piece of the fabric of the firm?
100%. I'm going to share the results of that survey, and it's good stuff to see. So this was a question that we asked: does your firm have a dedicated team and/or process for integrating partners into the law firm? 71% said yes within the group here. So that's good to see. And then obviously we can always chat further about different examples. Unless anyone has some examples, you could drop those right into the chat. Greg?
Okay, and now we're going to jump out of the survey for a minute and get into some of our proprietary data that we gather at Leopard Solutions. And I know, Phil, I think you wanted to comment on this slide.
Yeah, so we, as I mentioned earlier, we always do our State of the Industry webinar in January, where we look at the previous year and we look at hiring trends across a variety of different areas. Entry-level hires, associates, partners. We crossed the data around 700 different ways, probably. Well, we thought we'd just give a little tease and taste to where the data is for partner hiring, as also partner exits. But this is looking at the last 4 years, just looking at the first 10 months. We analyzed AmLaw 200 partner hires by practice. On the next slide, it'll be also about non-AmLaw 200 firms, also looking at it by practice. Some just things that stand out. You'll see litigation across the board is the bellwether when it comes to partner hires. You've seen there's actually some increase within the AmLaw 200 just within the last 4 years. It comes out to 15% increase from 2021 to 2020. Again, these are the first 10 months of each individual year. Corporate obviously rides the wave of the economy and private equity and so on and so forth. So we saw this year so far a higher year than at this point last year for 2023, and also higher than it was in 2021, but not quite where it was in 2022, which was sort of a banner year for corporate work. The other four other practices that we see here are just some the other top practices for hiring over the last 4 years. IP, real estate, all labor employment banking, all pretty much pretty stagnant and consistent hiring trends for Am Law 200 firms. When we compare this versus the non-Am Law 200 firms, it's pretty striking when you see the growth in litigation for the non-Am Law 200 firms in the last 4 years. It's basically double where we were in 2021, and it far outpaces the hiring of really any of the other top practices. You can see there's actually a closer proximity between corporate and some of the other practices like IP, real estate, labor, and employment. This kind of comes from what we've seen in some of the conversations and the recent survey we did of outside counsel and their buying habits. They're choosing mid-sized firms for more of that transactional option because it's they're looking. They feel there's a similar expertise at perhaps a slightly more cost-effective work. So I think non-Am Law 200 firms are seeing that, and they're doing a focus on hiring sort of those next tier practices like IP, real estate, and labor and employment, which is why you see those numbers pretty consistent with corporate. But litigation still far and away is the practice that leads the way.
Yeah, that litigation difference is striking. Okay, so we talked a little bit about partner entrances. So now we'll pivot over to exits and trends in future planning. So this was a survey question. We asked, does your firm have a succession planning strategy? 69% of firms reported that they did, in fact, have a succession planning strategy. So it's clear that many organizations are proactively addressing leadership transitions. It reflects an understanding of the importance of structured plans to ensure long-term stability and continuity in client relationships and firm operations. However, the 31% without a strategy I think highlights a potential risk for those firms, as the lack of planning could hinder their ability to attract new talent or maintain client confidence during leadership transitions. And I think we saw that a little bit in a subsequent question. Is leadership hanging on too long an impediment toward enticing lateral partner hires? And here we saw a full third said yes. In fact, that was the case. So it signals that the prolonged tenure at the top may deter lateral partner hires. These perceptions might stem from concerns about opportunities for upward mobility or misalignment with modern strategic goals. However, 67% saying it is not an issue. That tells us that the majority of firms appear to manage this dynamic effectively. Still, firms should remain mindful of this perception, particularly in competitive hiring markets where prospective hires may value clarity in leadership succession. Okay. And here we had some more Leopard data that we wanted to showcase. So this was looking at partner exits by age groups over the last 12 months. And this is Am Law 200, USA based. So, after we saw some large scale defections of partners from the top 200 law firms. We reported on that last year in our succession planning white paper. And so we looked at the statistics in multiple ways and laid bare the challenge of succession planning when older managing partners don't plan to step aside. We did see the subsequent retirement of several managing partners, more than usual. And then here we see the same data point, managing partners by JD year range in the top 200 firms. And there's been a dramatic realignment of managing partners by age category. The oldest cohort dropped from 8% to 3%. The next group, 61 to 70, dropped 7%. And the 51 to 60 category increased by 10%. The youngest cohort dropped by 1%. It represents a major realignment and can influence the longevity of partner laterals. Younger leadership, a different model, is very attractive to the partner set.
Craig, can you just add the other chart? So yeah,
Oh,
so just to
yes.
just to piggyback on what Craig's saying. So
Yeah.
when we did that succession planning paper in August 2023, we did analyze this to sort of get a sense of the ages of managing partners. And it is pretty striking, the difference in just about 15 months that there you see a change in the age, or using again JD as sort of a proxy for age. It's an 11% decrease in age. Essentially, you'll see an increase in managing partners basically under the age of 60. So it is striking. And again, this might all be part of the succession planning that a lot of firms are implementing, as well as some of these large combinations that we're seeing as well now. So it could be a call out from all that.
Yeah, definitely seems like it could be an inflection point. Okay, and then I guess over to you, Eva, with some key takeaways from the survey.
Craig, do you want to drop the last survey in about like what people see
Yeah.
next year, or there's another one before I kind of finish up?
Yeah, why don't we do that? And while you're going, let me drop that in. So we'll do the projections for 2025, what the group here thinks we will see with partner hiring, and if any of the recent results from the election might have an impact. I mean, we always see an increase whenever there's a change in leadership in hiring. But in general, what do we see as we go into 2025? So sorry, go ahead, Eve.
Thank you. No, this is great. I want to see what people think. So just to kind of summarize here, because we're really hoping that the information is great data that you can take a look at and be able to share with people at your firm and leaders, but also like what are the takeaways? So implementing effective sourcing and referral processes. I was surprised to see both a response here, but also the 90+ people who filled out the survey that 35% of their lateral partner hires were referral sources, usually their own partners, maybe people they knew from previous firms or deals that they worked on, or cases, or professional associations. That was kind of interesting. So, really using the technology out there, like Leopard Solutions, so that you can source and really kind of be strategic as to who you're targeting, and really thinking about how you can help those connections to happen. If you're in charge of recruiting or identifying talent, lateral partner talent for your firm, verifying potential portable business. That was brought up in some of the narratives that we got, like what's a challenge? What do you struggle with? And I don't think there's a magic formula out there, but whether it's really actually utilizing the LPQs, keeping track of what happens going backwards. I mean, that could be a very, very useful and strategic thing to do, is look backwards and see if you can identify who has really been able to bring in the business that they said they're going to bring in, or what have the struggles have been, or is it conflict? What is it? Just so that you can help the firm really gather not just information, but intelligence to help them be able to project that moving forward. Even technical things, I heard that a lot, that the conflict checks, the background checks, how they can take up time and maybe slow down the process. Is there something that you can do to put really good streamlined processes in place? I know some firms, as soon as the person gets to the second or third round, they say, are you okay if we start doing some of this background check so that when the offer comes through, it's it's going to take a couple of days instead of a couple of weeks. So just really thinking about, is there ways to streamline some of those conflict and background checks? Training your partners to interview and sell effectively. I mean, I guess I sit in that space. I train so many law firms on this, but just because you're a brilliant attorney does not mean you know how to interview, and an interrogation is not an interview either. So just really thinking, are we getting the best information? Maybe calling some of your well-cherished recruiters, search firms, is saying, are you getting any feedback? I see that we've sent a few candidates in and they turned down their second round. Has something gone wrong with the interview process? Can you get feedback on how we're perceived? Which interviewers at our firm are doing really well and which ones are turning candidates off? What I used to do when I was in law firms, I used to go back to the laterals that we hired 6 months after we hired them and say, now you've been here for a while, and who did you really enjoy interviewing with and who turned you off? And then becoming cognizant of that and really either training those people or possibly even removing them from the process if they're not serving you in the way that you hope they were. And then tracking the ROI on lateral partner hires, really kind of looking at some of the data. And I realize that everything I'm suggesting here are proactive things, and so much of our work is reactive. But if there's any way to carve out ways to be able to do this, and then be able to show the data, show the information, provide really valuable suggestions to your leadership, to the partners who are in charge of lateral partner hiring, to the practice group heads, whoever you work closely with, so that you're able to really add value at the highest level. And I have always found in law firms that if you show them the evidence and you show them what you could be doing that's kind of at a quote unquote higher billable rate, the chances of maybe getting the kind of administrative help or being able to buy a technology like Leopard Solutions or being able to implement a tracking system, when you show them how much money you're saving them or how much you're saving them by not making the wrong hiring decisions or making sure people get integrated well, they tend to listen. So I hope that some of these suggestions and best practices that maybe you're already doing and maybe you want to add to are practical takeaways that you could take from our webinar today.
Awesome. Thanks, Ava. There was a question that came in about obtaining info on lateral turnover. We didn't share any of that here, but that speaks to their last point, tracking the ROI. We've had a number of webinars in the past, and there's as much, if not more, importance on retention that the folks need to focus on. Always recruit your own folks is a thing that we always hear and we always promote. So we do have a lot of data, and a lot of our clients know about that, tracking their own internal hiring efforts and how you're doing in different areas. So that's something that's extremely important as you're making hiring decisions going into the new year. So I'm going to share, as we talk about the new year, results of that survey. So how much do you expect the recent election results to impact partner recruiting during 2025? All positive people on the results. No one thinks that we're going to the downside. No change, 35%, slightly increased, 49%, significantly increased, 17%. So 6% of folks believe that there'll be a pretty large increase. 2/3 of the folks will think that there'll be an increase in partner hiring as we go into next year. So we'll see what happens.
And we saw in our survey too, we didn't post it here, but I think 98% said they expect their firm to grow in 2025.
That's right.
So, right? Is that the number you expect? 98%?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So that's exciting. I know that means we'll all be busy, but I'm grateful for that. And I hope that, again, anything that you could take away and be able to think about how to apply. And, in terms of our own ROI on our time, it's always the proactive things, not the reactive things that really make us feel like we're able to really help our firms and our candidates in the best way possible. Any last questions or anything else? And then
I think
and you'll send there's a link for the survey. They'll be able to get the survey. It will be on.
Yep. Great. Yeah, so that came up a couple of times in the questions. We will share the recording. We will share the slides. Craig is actually going to pivot from this to writing a little white paper. We'll take some information and feedback from this webinar. We'll work with Eva as well on that. We'll publish a nice little white paper and write up on this. This was recorded, so that would be shared as well. So be on the lookout for all of that. But with that, I think we're at our time. Ava, thank you very
Thank
much
you so
for
much.
all
It's
your,
wonderful to partner with you guys.
yeah,
I'm really
this
excited
was
about this.
yeah,
great. Thank you.
And
Likewise.
Craig, thanks for all your work as well.
Thank
And everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.